Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I thought I would answer a question that I got, and someone had asked me, hey, what does your programming look like for people who compete in other sports who you coach? Like, what does their strength training look like? Because obviously, if maximizing strength and muscle isn't their number one goal, it's obviously important to them, but it's not their highest priority, then how do you go about programming them if their sport specificity needs to take a higher priority? And I think the answer to that is very simple. I'm just going to throw through some of my conjugate training from this last week or two that I did. Obviously, I'll probably hopefully be a lot stronger than this by the time this vlog comes out or this video comes out. But the idea is the same. You'll see me doing max work, speed work, and accessory work. So, what I tend to do for my people who need to focus on another sport, and I mean focus on another sport, I'm talking they are pretty serious about it, meaning we're talking people who, practice at least 4 or 5 times a week, if not more. Like they're fairly serious, they're competing in something else, whether it's a combat sport, would be a perfect example. Say BJJ, boxing, something like that. Maybe they're a really serious golfer, or again, a field sport. What does the training look like? Well, I put them on conjugate, and the things that I like to do and we'd like to see with that is I'll do a 4-day conjugate rotation, and it is always max work and speed work if they're going to be an athlete. Like I have no use for the repetition effort days that some people like to work in. I have no use for that for any sort of actual athlete. Right? We get all our hypertrophy through the accessory work. We need to be focusing on force production. So what I like to see is how to balance the recovery with it. So what we look at on max effort days, whether we're doing single maxes or double maxes on the lower, and a lot of times those athletes will do single maxes on the lower. May not matter as much, it's not as big of a deal. They're not going to power lift. Power lifters, I really do like the double maxes. Some of my people who just want to get cock diesel strong, we do the same thing, meaning a squat and a hinge on the max effort day. But what I like to do with these athletes is rotate through variations. We don't worry about even the classic lifts as much, meaning I don't really care about their back squat with a straight bar. I don't care about even always their bench so much. Like we'll use variations. Hopefully they have specialty bars. I am more inclined to have them do more of their work against bands and chains for max effort work, right? More inclined to use specialty bars a lot more if they're in a contact sport, okay, than using the classic straight bar. Right? We tend to do that because they need to be strong at different angles. They also need to be thinking about force production in a way in which they can outrun the bands and chains. And I try to limit them to not hitting true maxes. I don't want them going over about 95%. There's no reason for these athletes to hit a true 1 rep max unless it's going to be tested for some reason, for some testing purposes in their sport. And even then, they know that it's good. In other words, if they can do 400 pounds and it's 92 or 93% effort, they know they can come in and do 420 if they have to. They're going to be able to, not a problem. So what we tend to do is do that. Speed work, I like to sometimes go a little higher volume on the speed work. I'm not opposed to 10 to 12 sets of every movement on the dynamic effort for them. However, we always keep it super light. I don't want to hear this nonsense of 70%. None of that. We want bands and chains. If someone wants to truly be an athlete, they need to find a way to set up bands or chains on their speed work. Okay, it's not that hard. If they're serious about their strength training for a sport, they're going to do it. They'll find a way to hook up bands to dumbbells or get some cheap chains. I limit them to 50% of total weight, meaning bands and chains added to the bar. The total weight of all of it together, we don't ever go over 50%. Okay, because I want to keep their recovery in check and we're worried about force production. Okay, I don't like it higher than that. So if we're running 25% band tension of their max, then we're only going to run 25% bar weight. Right? I'm also more inclined, if they have specialty bars, to rotate those bars a lot more often on their speed work. The reason for that, again, varying the stress if they're going to be in a more dynamic sport to where they're going to move or turn on a field, they're going to grapple people, hit people. Again, I want varied angles. Okay, and we put most of our focus into the max work and the speed work, believe it or not, for them. I have them minimize accessories. Well, what do we mean? 2 or 3 exercises, that's it. That's it. So on their pressing days, for example, their bench days, we'll probably do some sort of pulling and or upper back work, maybe some triceps, maybe some sort of auxiliary press, but it's only going to be maybe 3 exercises, maybe. And probably not more than that. So if we do a secondary press, whether it's more benching or dumbbell presses or whatever, we're going to do that. We're going to do some sort of back work and then maybe band tricep press downs or something. I've got to be very careful of their tendons, so I tend to favor band work. For a lot of that. But if their triceps are strong or they don't need a lot of extra chest, I might be more inclined to cut one of those out and put more upper back pulling in, depending upon the sport they do. Okay? And people will say, well, do you have them do cleans and all that? No, we don't need it if we have the speed work. That covers that. I'm not as worried. But, I might have them do more upper back work or shoulder work in place of one of those things. But I'm going to cut them off at about 3 exercises on the upper days. Okay? Lower days, I'm going to cut it off at around 2. And that literally might mean they do nothing but good mornings and reverse hypers or something, depending on what they have access to. If they need more quad work, we'll do a leg press or an isolateral leg movement, depending on what they need. They're always going to do some sort of hip hinge, though. Always. Out of those 2 exercises, whether they need another hinge or they need a press, it's going to depend upon where their weaknesses are and what they need. But I'm only going to have them do two accessory movements. That's it. And then they get out of the gym and they spend the rest of their time focusing on general physical preparedness, GPP, again, whatever they need that's going to help with their sport the most, whether it's sled dragging or weighted carries or tire flips or whatever they need to do, kettlebell swings. All right, whatever they need to do for GPP, that's going to take a slightly higher priority over accessory work for them because, again, usually certain sports. And then whatever they need to do for their sport specificity, their sport-specific practice. But we always want to maximize recovery, so we keep the accessory volume limited. We don't hit true maxes. I don't want them ever grinding. And we keep the speed work light, but sometimes with higher volumes. So hopefully that answers the question in detail. So I hope that has been informative. I hope it explains it very, very well of how we deal with that from a recovery end. And yes, we're sacrificing a little bit of gains for it, but that's because gains are not their number 1 priority. It's number 2 or 3 down the board. All right, I'll talk to you guys next time.